All right, get ready, because today we're diving into something truly mind-blowing, prophecies from the Quran and their impact on history.
Yeah, prophecies in religion are often seen as glimpses into the future.
Right, glimpses into the future.
But what happens when those glimpses are unbelievably precise and seem downright impossible?
That's what we're going to explore today.
Yeah, that's what makes this so fascinating.
Exactly.
These prophecies weren't vague predictions.
Yeah.
They contained specific details about events that at the time seemed completely improbable.
Okay, so give me an example.
Let's say sure.
Like, what kind of improbable events are we talking about?
Well, we've got two incredible examples from Islamic history.
Oh, perfect.
First, the Byzantine Empire's unexpected comeback against the Persians.
Okay.
And second, the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, which initially seemed like a major setback for the Muslims.
Yeah, so we've got empires and treaties.
Exactly. It's a wild ride, so buckle up.
All right, I am buckled up. Let's start with the Byzantine Empire.
Okay, so picture this.
Okay.
It's the early 7th century.
Okay.
And the Byzantine Empire, this superpower, the dominant force in the West,
Right.
is teetering on the edge of collapse.
Oh, wow.
The Persian Empire was conquering huge chunks of their territory.
Like what?
Syria, Palestine,
Wow.
Egypt, which was like their main source of grain, their breadbasket.
Oh, so this is serious stuff.
They were at Constantinople's doorstep, like literally ready to deliver the final blow.
So it really seemed like the end for the Byzantines.
It really did.
But then in the middle of all this chaos,
Yeah.
a prophecy comes out of the Quran,
Right.
specifically Surah Rum, and it doesn't just say, oh, the Byzantines will recover someday.
No.
It says they'll actually triumph.
And not just triumph,
Yeah.
but within a specific time frame.
Well, hold on. So they actually put a timeline on it?
They did 3 to 9 years.
That's incredibly specific.
It's bold, right?
It's incredibly bold.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The Byzantine Empire is in shambles.
Total chaos.
Armies depleted, treasury drained, enemies closing in.
Right. It seems like there's no hope.
And to predict their victory,
Yeah.
let alone within such a precise window, it seemed utterly ludicrous.
I can imagine people must have been like, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
But then what happens?
Well, here's where things get really interesting. Around 622 CE,
Great.
Emperor Heraclius, the Byzantine ruler,
Yeah.
he launches this remarkable counteroffensive.
Whoa, hold on. So they actually start fighting back.
Big time. And we're not talking about just blind luck here.
So what was it?
Strategy. He completely overhauled the army.
How so?
He used religious imagery to rally his troops
Oh, interesting.
and forged strategic alliances with groups like the Khazars.
That's smart.
Yeah, he was a brilliant military strategist.
So he was using his brain,
Absolutely.
not just relying on some, miracle.
He abandoned Constantinople.
Wait, what? Why would he do that?
It seemed risky,
Yeah, super risky.
but it allowed him to establish a new base and attack the Persians from their flank from Armenia, where they were vulnerable.
So he kind of outmaneuvered them.
Exactly. And he skillfully used the Byzantine navy.
Oh, so they had a good navy.
They did, and it helped them outmaneuver the Persians even more.
So it really was a combination of factors.
Right. Human ingenuity, strategic brilliance.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore the timing.
What do you mean?
This dramatic turnaround.
Yeah.
It happened within the exact time frame predicted by the Quran.
Whoa. Okay, so the prophecy actually came true.
It did. By 624 CE, the Byzantines had achieved decisive victories, fulfilling the prophecy word for word.
Okay, so the prophecy came true.
Yeah,
Empires rise and fall.
sure.
I mean, wouldn't people have just said it was a lucky guess?
Well, that's what historical context comes in.
Okay, how so?
The specificity of the prophecy,
Yeah.
stating both the victor and the timeline,
Right.
makes it really hard to dismiss as just chance.
That's true.
And remember, this victory didn't just happen in isolation.
What do you mean?
It had ripple effects throughout the entire region.
Oh, so it actually changed things.
Big time.
So how did this seemingly impossible victory actually impact the world back then?
Well, for one, it significantly weakened the Persian Empire.
So it shifted the balance of power.
Exactly. It created a power vacuum.
And what filled that vacuum?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. This Byzantine victory coincided with a key victory for the early Muslims
Oh, wow.
at the Battle of Badr.
So the timing was perfect.
Almost too perfect to ignore.
Right.
This event, it wasn't just a historical footnote.
Oh, yeah.
It was a turning point in history. It shifted the balance of power, sparked theological debates, and ultimately contributed to the spread of a new faith.
Wow. Talk about a butterfly effect.
Right. One seemingly impossible event
Yeah.
leads to another, and suddenly the world has changed forever.
That's crazy.
It is. And it brings us to our second fascinating example.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Treaty of Hudaybiyyah.
All right, so this is the treaty we talked about earlier.
This one might seem less dramatic on the surface,
Okay.
but it reveals a completely different side of prophetic fulfillment.
Oh, how so?
One that's more about long-term strategy
Okay.
and trusting a plan that's bigger than the immediate situation.
I like it already.
Okay, so let's set the scene.
Okay.
It's 628 CE,
Right.
6 years after the Muslims were expelled from Mecca.
Okay.
They desperately want to perform the pilgrimage,
Which is...
a sacred journey to the Kaaba.
Right, of course.
So they set out unarmed, seeking peace and permission to enter the city.
So far, so good. Sounds peaceful.
Well, the Meccans, still wary of the growing Muslim community,
Yeah, makes sense.
they blocked their entry.
Oh, so they weren't allowed in.
No tensions were high, and this standoff led to negotiations,
Okay.
and eventually the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah.
Yeah, so what did this treaty actually involve?
What were the terms?
On the surface, it seemed like a major concession from the Muslims.
Really?
Like they had to return to Medina without performing the pilgrimage that year.
Any Meccan who converted to Islam had to be returned to Mecca,
What?
and the Muslims could only return for pilgrimage the following year.
So it seemed like they didn't gain much from this treaty.
It did seem that way.
I imagine the Muslims weren't too happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Many felt like it was a bad deal.
Right.
They came in peace, seeking to perform this sacred ritual.
Yeah.
And they felt this treaty put them at a real disadvantage.
So what happened?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
The Quran actually contains a prophecy about this very event
No way.
in Surah Al-Fath,
Which means...
which translates to the victory.
Wait, hold on. The chapter called The Victory predicted this treaty that seems like a loss.
Yeah, pretty amazing, right?
I don't get it.
Well, the prophecy has two parts.
Okay.
First, it predicts a near victory as a result of the treaty.
Okay. A near victory.
And second, it foretells that Muslims would eventually enter Mecca's sacred mosque in complete safety, with some having shaved heads and others having shortened their hair as part of the pilgrimage rituals.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's unpack this near victory concept.
Sure.
What exactly made this treaty, which seemed like a setback, actually a win for the Muslims?
Right. So, despite its limitations, the treaty brought about 2 years of unprecedented peace in the region.
Okay.
And this allowed the Muslim community to consolidate, spread their message, and grow exponentially.
So they were able to really flourish.
Exactly. Remember, at this point, they were still a relatively new and developing community.
Right.
And this piece was crucial.
So the treaty unintentionally helped them.
You could say that it created the perfect conditions for Islam to grow.
How much did they grow during this time?
Well, in this 2 years, more people converted to Islam than in the preceding 19 years combined.
Oh, that's huge.
It is, and it's all thanks to the peace that the treaty provided.
So that's a pretty significant outcome for something that seemed like a major compromise at first.
It really is.
And what about the second part of the prophecy?
The one about entering Mecca.
Yeah. Did they eventually get in?
They did in a pretty dramatic fashion.
How many more?
In 630 CE, the Meccans actually violated the treaty.
Oh, so they broke the agreement.
They did, and that gave the Muslims a justified reason to conquer the city.
So they went to war.
Not exactly. Instead of a bloody battle, the conquest of Mecca was peaceful.
Really?
The Muslims entered the sacred mosque exactly as prophesied, some with shaved heads, others with hair shortened, and most importantly, in complete safety.
It's like everything fell into place.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a testament to strategy, patience, and maybe a little bit of divine guidance.
I like how you put that.
What seemed like an unfavorable situation actually paved the way for an even bigger victory.
That's exactly what makes studying these prophecies so intriguing.
It really makes you think.
It challenges our perceptions of victory and defeat. Sometimes what seems like a setback is actually a stepping stone to something much greater.
I'm starting to rethink my own definitions of success and failure.
I think that's a good thing.
So we've talked about the accuracy of these prophecies.
Right.
But what else makes them so compelling as evidence?
Well, it's not just that they came true,
Yeah.
but the nature of the prophecies themselves.
Okay, what do you mean?
First, their specificity.
Ah, so they weren't just vague predictions.
No, not at all. They weren't just like, good things will happen.
Right, they were super detailed.
Exactly. The Byzantine prophecy specified the victors and the time frame. The Hudaybiyyah prophecy outlined the specific terms of the treaty and even described how Muslims would eventually enter Mecca.
So there was no room for misinterpretation.
Right. It was all laid out.
And these prophecies were documented before any of this stuff happened, right?
That's another crucial point. The Quran containing these prophecies existed in written form long before these events unfolded.
So we can rule out any chance of fabrication.
Exactly. We're talking about predictions documented well in advance.
That's a powerful piece of evidence.
It is.
No one could have just added in details later to make it fit.
Yep. It was all there from the beginning.
What else?
The improbable nature of the events themselves.
Right.
They seemed so unlikely at the time.
The Byzantines were on the verge of collapse.
Exactly. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah seemed like a huge setback for the Muslim community.
Can you imagine being alive back then?
It would have been wild.
To hear those prophecies and then actually see them come true.
I know, right? Talk about a faith-affirming experience.
Okay, so we've got the specificity
Right?
and the improbable nature. What else stands out?
The precise fulfillment of the prophecies.
They happened exactly as predicted.
Exactly. The Byzantines triumphed within the predicted 3 to 9 years.
Yeah.
And the Muslims entered Mecca peacefully, even down to the detail about shaving their heads.
Wow. No room for interpretation there.
Nope, it all happened just as foretold.
Is there anything else we should consider when we're thinking about these prophecies?
One more thing, the historical documentation.
Oh, right. There are actual records of this stuff.
Absolutely. We have accounts from multiple perspectives, witnesses' records, that back up the fulfillment of these prophecies.
So it's not just based on faith or stories.
No, it's documented history.
We have solid evidence.
So you do.
So we're not dealing with speculation or rumors here.
Right. We have verifiable historical records.
It's really amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's this incredible blend of prophecy and documented history.
Yeah, and it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It invites us to look at history from a whole new perspective.
Like maybe things aren't just random.
Exactly. Maybe there's a bigger picture, a grand tapestry that connects it all.
It makes you wonder about what forces are really at play.
It certainly does. And these prophecies also raise some really intriguing questions.
Like what?
About the nature of time and foresight.
Okay, how so?
Well, if these events were actually foretold centuries ago, what does that tell us about knowledge and destiny?
That's a pretty deep thought.
It is.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole,
Sure.
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
What's that?
The impact of these prophecies.
Right, the ripple effects.
Exactly. We talked about how the Byzantine victory shifted the balance of power
Yeah.
and created the conditions for the rise of Islam.
Uh-huh.
And how the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, which seems like a loss,
Right.
actually led to this huge period of growth for the Muslim community.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's like sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Exactly. And in this case, those steps forward had a huge impact on history.
You know, it's interesting.
What is it?
The peaceful conquest of Mecca,
Yeah.
which happened because of the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah,
Right.
that was a turning point.
It really was.
It solidified the Muslim presence in the Arabian Peninsula.
And from there,
Yeah.
Islam spread rapidly in the following centuries.
So these prophecies, they weren't just about predicting the future. They actually shaped it,
They were catalysts for change.
influencing empires, ideas, the way societies were structured.
And their impact is still felt today.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think we're left with more questions than answers.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I don't think so either.
It's like the best journeys always leave you wanting more.
Right, wanting to explore further.
Exactly. These prophecies, they give us this glimpse into history, faith, the human experience. They challenge us to question our assumptions, look at things from different angles,
Yeah.
and consider the possibility that there might be more to the world than we realize.
And that even when things seem impossible,
Yeah.
there's always hope
Always.
and a way forward.
And maybe even a little divine intervention along the way.
So what do you think?
About what?
Are these prophecies evidence?
Or just coincidences.
Let us know your thoughts.
We'd love to hear them.
Until next time, keep exploring
Keep questioning.
and keep that curiosity alive.